WMPG thrives with support from listeners and from Maine Solar Solutions. Maine Solar Solutions, helping empower homeowners and businesses with solar electric solutions for 10 years. Information at mainsolarsolutions.com.
You are listening to WMPG 90.9 Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. Live from the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy, this is Scientifically Speaking, a weekly half-hour program devoted to elegant curiosities. And I am one of your hosts, Sarah Chang, and joining me, as always, is Bernie Ryan, DJ Star Watcher. How are you, Bernie?
Yes, hi, Sarah. Very good, thank you.
Bernie is our professor of the Astronomy Lab here at USM and our local protector of the night skies. Reach out to us at WMPGScientificallySpeaking@gmail.com or on Twitter at WMPGSciSpeak. And you can head over to WMPG.org to find the last 5 weeks of archives of all of your favorite shows, including this one. Bernie, could you let our listeners know what is up in the night sky for this coming week?
Okay, certainly. So this will be Friday, October 14th. So there'll be a waning gibbous moon. It was full back on the 9th. That was the famous Hunter's moon. It was a really nice full moon. Actually, Jupiter was just a couple degrees above it. The other day, I think it was Saturday, Jupiter was right above the moon. So hopefully you got to see that. And then it was close to Mars. But it's waning gibbous now. And it's going to be last quarter on the 17th. So it's about halfway in between. The days are getting pretty short. Sunrise just before 7 and setting at 6 o'clock already. So the days are down to just about 11 hours. So they're getting shorter. Still have a ways to go to the solstice, obviously. And then planet-wise, Saturn is up, rising a little bit earlier. So it's well up already by the time it gets dark. And then about 30 degrees to the east of that would be Jupiter, which comes up just before sunset because it's just past opposition. And then Mars is getting up earlier and earlier. It's probably around 10 o'clock, a little bit after, depending on your horizon. And then we lost Venus. So you got those three planets. And that's about it. No real meteor showers. Well, there might be a few early Orionids. They will peak next Friday the 21st. But you can look for some early Orionid meteors too, because the moon is kind of, not really bothering us right now with the waning gibbous phase.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Bernie.
Sure.
And if you couldn't take notes fast enough, you can also check out the monthly What's Up column in the Portland Press Herald. Welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking. We are delighted to, we were inspired last week with our Hispanic scientists that we shared with our listeners. And Ellen Ochoa, you had mentioned, she was the first female Hispanic astronaut.
Yep.
And she was also an accomplished flautist. I thought it was like a flutist, no?
Well, you would
flautist.
think, but yeah, for some reason, they had to, like that guy on America's Got Talent, Terry something.
Okay.
He's a weightlifter and he actually plays the flute. And
Oh, really?
They always make a note that he's a flautist. He's performed
flautist.
before. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's start with, we were inspired to do a show all on arts and music in space. And talk a little bit about how it might be different, how the mechanics might be a little bit different from here on Earth. And we're going to start with the first artist in space.
Yes. Right. So this is also almost the first person in space.
Oh.
Not quite. Yuri Gagarin, that
quite.
was in 1961. And, of course, John Glenn, the first orbit American in 1962. So this is close. It was March 18th, 1965. And it was a Russian or Soviet cosmonaut named Alexei Leonov. And it was the Vashkod 2. It was like, it was a single person. So it was like even before Gemini. He was the only one. No, there must have been two people. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, there were two. So it was like a Gemini. The capsule was really tiny, obviously, but there were two people. So that means sunrise in Russian. So he was also the first person to walk in space and the first one to actually draw something. So his whole mission, he was lucky to even be alive.
Oh.
So being the first spacewalker, there's certain things they didn't count on. And one of them was that the kind of suit all kind of pressurized and inflated a little bit while he was out there. He was out there for like 12 minutes. It was on a tether, of course. This was way before the manned maneuvering units and all that. But still pretty dangerous, being the first human ever in our, 200,000-year history of modern humans to be walking around in space. So you could probably expect a few problems. So then he let some of the oxygen out, squoze himself back into the airlock and back into the Vashkod capsule. So that was okay. But then after that, it was spinning crazily out of control. So he had to do everything manually, almost like Neil Armstrong on the moon had to do a couple things manually. And then, so he missed his landing site by 1,500 miles.
Oh, no.
So, and I think they were supposed to land in the ocean, but he landed in somewhere in Siberia in 2 feet of snow.
Oh, wow.
So I guess that, cushioned the capsule enough.
Yeah.
And he knocked out a tree, and then it took him like hours to get the capsule upright so he could even get out.
Wow.
And he was rescued. Then he had to ski 5 miles out of that.
Wait, did he have skis with him?
Yeah, I don't. That's weird. They would have fit skis in that little cap. Yeah, because he wasn't.
Or maybe
supposed
he
to land.
made some skis.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw some of the pictures of all that happening when he
Yeah.
finally got rescued. So so it was quite an interesting story that he even made it. But all right. So what he drew, and it's kind of ironic. Of course, the whole astronauts, they all have that overview effect or like an orbital perspective. So he had colored pencil, so he didn't have to worry about watercolor. So he drew a bit of the atmosphere, the air glow, that thin blue line that separates us from space, and maybe just a few things like a sunrise or. You see these 18 of them, a total of 36 every single day.
Yeah.
He was only up there for a little over a day and a half. So he saw like 45 sunrises. So he just sketched that in colored pencil. So instead of trying to sketch the sky or something out, he was sketching, getting the orbital perspective of the view from the Earth. And that was the first drawing in space. So
Wow.
it's kind of fitting.
Wow.
And it's kind of a window that, because now we have great images, we're not reliant on a little sketch or something.
Right, right.
We can all kind of see this, but none of us will probably ever go to space. We're not training to be astronauts. But here you have these people, and then especially all the dangers. Now it's a little safer, I would suppose, too. And then they can kind of share that with us. So that was a really neat way to have the first drawing ever in space.
What exactly makes the thin blue line a thin blue line?
Oh, yeah, no, that's the atmosphere. I mean, it's the air molecules just run out, and the space that's called the Kármán line, it's 62 miles up, 100 kilometers. And you lose enough for the molecules of air, the nitrogen and oxygen, and then space just turns black. So the blue scatters out the wavelength. So that's about the boundary. And, of course, they're above that. They're up around 250 miles. So they're way
If
above
he can
that.
draw it, I would assume he's above it.
Yeah, he's definitely above it, and then he put a sunrise in it and some other things. So, yeah, it wasn't a great drawing, but it was the first, and he's lucky to even. He just passed away in 2019, so he was
wow,
about 90.
wow.
So he was lucky to even make it back.
Yeah. So wait, was he an artist or he was just drawing?
Oh, good point. No, he was actually he was an artist, and he'd had a couple other skills besides being all the other skills to be.
But
an
you just
astronaut.
said it was a bad drawing.
It wasn't a great drawing, no. but he hadn't formally, like Alan Bean, one of the moonwalkers, and Nicole Stott, we had mentioned her before. She wrote a book called Back to Earth. They were actually trained as artists, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was a trained artist.
Cool.
Not just like you and I, just trying to sketch something from whatever, driving by something in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so
we'll have
that
to
was a good
find it.
start, a rough
Yeah.
start, but a good. Now it's a lot safer. The musical instruments, I mean, they're not taking their lives in danger and spinning out of control and landing in Siberia in the snow or something.
Yeah.
When they're doing that stuff.
Yeah. And we don't know anybody who's attempted painting or.
Well, yeah, Nicole Stott did.
Oh, okay.
The Back
What
to
did
Earth
she
book.
use?
A watercolor.
Watercolor.
Yeah.
Oh, how was that?
It was a little tough. She was trained, and I think I saw a picture of it somewhere, not in her book, or maybe in the book. It wasn't a great watercolor, but in space, you could just have all these droplets of water floating around and try to catch them or, play around with them or whatever.
I was gonna say,
So,
do you you probably have your water with your
Just sitting
color
there.
just sitting there as bubbles and then smash it with your canvas.
Oh,
You know
that's
what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, like when you hit that asteroid, you could just. Here's the color, and you do this instead of doing this and then applying it. The color just sitting there, you do this. That's more like a finger painting than a controlled. That's a controlled
Wait,
experiment.
what did she try to paint?
It might have been something similar. I couldn't
Okay.
even tell from the book.
Okay.
Maybe the blue line from space, because that was
Okay.
a big part of her book too. Yeah.
So yeah, just a line.
Well, no, it was
Okay.
more than the line, but it didn't look that great. Actually, Alexis Leonov probably looked a little bit better.
Oh, really?
Because he had the colored pencil, didn't have to worry
Yeah,
about water floating at
some
rate
easier
0G.
easier tools.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
so first art done in space.
Yep.
Excellent. So let's move on to music.
Yep.
All right. So we started a little bit with Ellen Ochoa, and as Bernie had mentioned last week, she was an accomplished flautist, and she played the flute in space when she was on the
The
ISS.
shuttle.
Oh, the shuttle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she did that before ISS.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yep.
And so if you have never heard of a instrument being played in space, let's say you weren't around when Chris Hadfield has been, tweeting and stuff, basically it doesn't actually sound that different because sound waves still work very similarly in microgravity as they do on Earth. But as we kind of talked about with the art and especially the watercolor, you do have to handle the instruments a little bit differently. And so there was an interview with Carl Waltz and Ellen Ochoa, and Ellen had mentioned that when she played the flute in space, she had to have her feet in like foot loops, one to keep her, tethered, and because even though the force of air that comes out of the flute is not so large, in microgravity, it would actually be enough to move her around.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
the action and reaction.
Right,
Newton's
exactly.
second law, of course.
Exactly. And so, even though she said, even though I had my feet hooked into the loops, I could still feel that force pushing me back and forth as I played.
Oh, that's neat. You never think of that down here.
Yeah. And then Carl Waltz was a guitarist, and he mentioned that one of the nice things was that you don't need a guitar strap up there because you don't need to, right? But what he found funny was that he would be playing, and then all of a sudden the pick would go out of my hands, and instead of falling, it would float away, and I would have to catch it before it got lost. So
without missing a beat, right? Well,
exactly.
Probably start over.
The other thing he mentioned, very similar to what Ellen experienced with the flute, is that he played the keyboard, and when he hit notes, he would actually push himself or the keyboard
even the
away.
Thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So imagine that you're like pushing and it's like, wait, come back.
The piano leaves you in front of you. The big Steinway grand piano
exactly.
runs away from you on stage. That wouldn't be good.
I know. So you have to play everything in like pianissimo rather than like forte.
Really soft. Yeah, really. You hit one chord and the whole piano takes off. You fly into the audience.
Exactly.
It's like the rock concerts nowadays.
Pretty
you do
much.
The mosh pit.
Oh, yeah.
You'll end up, that'd be great. We should do some of that.
So the first, you mentioned the first art made in space. The first musical instruments actually were not particularly sophisticated, but they were brought on to the Gemini 6 and 7 missions. And basically in December 1965, the crews of both Gemini 6 and 7, they had done their like first rendezvous between the two spacecraft. This was all to do with like the moon and everything. And there were a couple folks on the spacecraft. So I believe it was Walter Wally, Shira, and Tom Stafford aboard the 6.
Yeah, remember the names.
I don't know any of these names.
Yeah, I know the names, yeah.
Frank Borman and James Lovell on Gemini 7. And then Elliot M. was at Mission Control in Houston. And so we're actually going to play a little clip from this. They were having a conversation between 6, 7, and Houston, and you listen for the music in this recording. So they had brought on a harmonica and some small bells, and these are the first musical instruments played in outer space.
Roger, Houston and Gemini 7, this is Gemini 6. We have an object, looks like a satellite, going from north to south, probably in a polar orbit. He's in a very low trajectory, traveling from north to south. Has a very high fineness ratio. Looks like it might even be a bonus thing. Very low, looks like maybe going 300 pretty soon. Stand by one. Looks like he's trying to signal something.
And there we go. And if you couldn't quite hear what they were saying, basically, Gemini 6 was talking about this object that they're seeing, and how it looks like a satellite going from north to south up in polar orbit, very low trajectory. And I think they're seeing Gemini 7 coming up, and then Gemini 7 responds, they go, "We got him too, ha 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 ha." And then, yeah, so it was like kind of a joke. Yeah, so they were like, yes, exactly. So yeah, that was, those are the first instruments that were played in outer space. So very tiny, obviously they can fit in your hand. Yeah. So they didn't, I guess NASA was okay with that.
Yeah, even a guitar.
Yep.
That was later.
Exactly. And then just to give the Russians a credit, they were the first ones to bring the first acoustic guitar into space, and that was actually aboard the Soviet Salyut 6 space station, and it was first played by Alexander Ivanchenko in 1978. And what was interesting about this time was that the Russians found that guitars, or musical instruments, provided psychological support for crew members. And there had been kind of a lot of work, I don't know how much work, but the psychologists realized that playing music in orbit improved well-being of cosmonauts during like long missions, which doesn't sound that surprising, but I think you can apply for, you can convince NASA to continue to bring musical instruments because it helps with your mental health.
Yeah. So long being more than just 10 days or something?
Probably, yeah.
The shuttle, when they had the shuttle going, they were only up between 10 and 14 days anyway.
Yeah.
The ISS, they're up for half a year.
Yeah.
So that would be really useful then.
So we're just going to kind of go through a bunch of, there were many accomplished musicians who went to space. And so we're going to kind of talk a little bit about them, what they did, and play some more clips from their time in space. And you'll find that they don't sound that different. There's quite a bit of background noise from, being in the space station. The video that we're staring at right now, she has crazy hair. And so this is, the next astronaut is astronaut and flautist Catherine Katie Coleman. And she really exercised her right for mental health support. She brought 4 flutes to the ISS during expeditions 26 and 27. And so I guess she split them up. She didn't bring 4 all at once. And in 2011, she played a duet with Ian Anderson, who is a flautist and frontman for Jethro Tull. I have never heard of that band. But Ian Anderson was on tour in Perm, Russia, and she was aboard the ISS. And so they did a very, very long distance duet. Actually, it might not actually be that much longer distance than.
Well, no, it's about 250 miles if they're over that, directly over that.
I was gonna say. All right, so we're gonna listen to a little bit of their sample.
Tonight, Ian Anderson and I would like to honor Yuri Gagarin for his brave journey 50 years ago. And we would like to celebrate the role that humans play in the exploration of our universe, past, present, and future, by sharing some music between Earth and space.
This is the guy on the Earth. So that was Katie Coleman and Ian Anderson, and they did a ISS Earth duet.
Yeah,
flute
that's
duet.
a neat concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why she chose to do the duet with him, but maybe they were friends or something.
Well,
but
he's a top flute player for Jeff
Oh,
and
is
Tull.
he?
I mean,
Oh,
that was
okay.
a great group. I liked that back in the 70s when I was going to school.
okay.
You're
that
not
was-
old enough
Yeah,
to
a little
know that
before
group.
my time.
Yeah, right.
All right. So, yeah, that it sounds nice.
Mm.
It doesn't sound that much different.
Mm-hmm.
Much better sound quality than the harmonica
Mm-hmm.
that played Jingle Bells. All right. And then Edward Ed Liu, during Expedition 7 in 2003, he was also an astronaut aboard the ISS. He played the keyboard. So we're going to listen to him kind of mess up the Moonlight Sonata. He made a couple mistakes, but he is much like what Ellen and Waltz did. Ellen and what was the guy's name? Waltz, Carl Waltz. Okay, what's his name? They had to strap themselves in, and so Ed basically kind of straps himself in. He straps up his legs and his feet, and he sits at this keyboard that is attached to one of the walls of the ISS, and he recorded a rendition of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata on the keyboard that actually lives on the ISS. So I don't know the history of how it got up, who wanted to bring the keyboard up, but it's there. So let's take a listen to this.
Moonlight Sonata. Now the problem with playing the Moonlight Sonata is that there are not enough keys here, so I actually run out of keys at one point. Somebody's taken off my string here. Okay, but we're gonna play, except for those.
So that was him
keys that
strapping
don't
his
work.
feet in.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Ready? Here we go. We'll see if I can play this by memory. Let's get it.
It sounds nice. What do you think?
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Piano
play that
player.
on Earth. I don't play it up there, but yeah. I don't do the third movement, though. It takes another 10 years worth of study.
Yeah.
About 30 times as fast as the first
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah. So that's classical music in space, thanks to Ed Liu. And again, he was on he was with Expedition 7. He had a couple of other people. I'm not going to show this demonstration because there's not too much of a performance here, but during Expedition 30 and 31 in 2012, astronaut Donald Petit built a didgeridoo.
I don't know.
Oh, well, it's a wind instrument that's indigenous to Australia.
Oh, yeah, didgeridoo.
And
Yeah.
didgeridoo, yeah.
Yeah.
And he made it from a vacuum cleaner hose and worked with Dan Burbank to kind of show how sound waves emanate from the end of the instrument and actually can disturb water. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, we're not going to show that one, but we will show this next one. So the astronaut, well, I guess they call them mission specialists. So mission specialist Naoko Yamazaki, she is one of the astronauts from the JAXA's 2010 Expedition 23. And so, Yamazaki was a mission specialist, and then Soichi Noguchi is a flight engineer. And they've actually, they did a couple of performances. One was a duet on the song Sakura Sakura, and one of them played the keyboard, and the other played, I believe she played the koto, or maybe one played the flute. I don't remember. Anyways, so Yamazaki actually, she did a very nice performance with a mini koto. So if you don't know what this instrument is, it's normally like 5 feet long, and you play it with kind of these extended like nails. So you get that kind of sound in there. And it's a very kind of classic traditional sound. You'll hear it in like traditional Chinese music and Korean music and Japanese music. It's this instrument has kind of morphed throughout the three countries. And we're just going to play, again, this is very small, so it sounds quite different from the normal instrument, but it's probably just what she was allowed to bring up.
Can't bring up a huge
So
harp or something.
Yeah, let's listen to her play this. She looks funny too because she's wearing like a kimono and all of her sleeves are floating up.
Yeah, and her hair, of course, even though it's
Her
tied
hair
in
is
the back,
floating up, yep.
that will always float up there.
Yep. So it's so small that she's just holding it in her hand and, she's just using her thumb to pick. But that was Naoko Yamazaki on aboard one of the JAXA capsules, actually. So they use that for their performance space. All right. Now, this last one was made quite famous. Even the original artist of the song, well, we're not going to play that song, but the original artist of the song that was made famous, Space Odyssey, David Bowie was like, wow, that's so cool. So Chris Hadfield is a Canadian astronaut. He's apparently retired now.
Yep,
I don't
I
even
met
know
him in
how old
person. He was performing for us at the Johnson Space Center.
Well, aren't you cool?
Good musician.
Yeah, I mean, he's played live like after. Yeah.
He has a whole band called Max Q with all former astronauts.
Yeah. Wow, good for him.
Yep.
So he's Canadian, and he one of the things he said is that when you break into song in The Final Frontier, it can sound a little bit nasal. It's weird because you're congested and your sinuses never drain properly. So that was kind of like another kind of interesting mechanism to think about as far as, music and space. But I believe the sample that we have comes from the Canadian Space Agency. And he was also the first and only Canadian astronaut aboard the Russian Mir, apparently. Oh, yeah. And so aboard the Mir, Hadfield plays with an ESA astronaut, Thomas Ryder, and they both play guitar. So I believe Hadfield is playing a travel guitar, and then the other guy has like a smallish lute guitar that he's playing. So they're doing a little duet. So let's take a listen here. And there's leaves floating around.
Yeah, leaves. Maybe that's actively
Yep.
part of it.
I think that's just there.
Putting them in there on purpose, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. And that concludes our music and arts in space. Was there anything that particularly inspired you, Bernie?
Well, yeah, I mean, both music and art are kind of universal languages, as is mathematics, and just giving us different views, especially with the art part. I mean, the music, all those other things go, but when they did the Earth-based and the space-based music, that was a really neat connection there, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I think I think we probably expect it to sound a little bit different, but it doesn't really. I mean, they have these specialized instruments that that they maybe make smaller versions of, but otherwise, it's good for their mental health, so we don't have psycho astronauts coming back to Earth.
There was only one that I know, that one that went to Florida.
Oh,
knock somebody off or something. That's the only psycho astronaut I know.
Yeah, maybe she should have taken up an instrument or something.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Bernie. And hopefully you've learned something new. And with that, you have been listening to Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG with myself and Bernie. Stay tuned for What's in My Mind, It's Not a Phase, with the fabulous Emma Beerley and Izzy Ferreira. And from your favorite nerds, pick up an instrument, and maybe one day you'll be an astronaut in space and become suddenly famous, TikTok famous or something like that.